The Pokemon Perdition mod just dropped, and being a fan of Pokemon creepypastas, I simply have to cover this one. Now, the first character that we see in the mod is from the creepypasta called Strangled, and this character's name is 7. Some of you may be wondering why he's standing in front of this tombstone, and it's actually a bit darker than you may think. 7's story actually began innocently enough with him basically trying to trade his Charizard with his brother so that his brother can finally complete his Pokédex. But during the trade, something happens where the game glitches and Charizard is basically lost forever. And what makes this even sadder is that Charizard was basically 7's favorite Pokemon. Kinda imagine like Ash and Pikachu's relationship. Now, after a year of being depressed and in mourning, 7 finally decides to try to resurrect his Charizard, giving this like pet cemetery type of vibe. Now, in order to resurrect Charizard, 7 uses the missing number glitch, but the game lets us know that something is going to go wrong when a message pops up that says, "Sometimes dead is better." Which for my Stephen King fans, you probably recognize is a literal pet cemetery quote. Now, 7 does actually succeed in resurrecting something, but it's not the Charizard that he had came to know and love. What he sees is some type of abomination like a monster. In the game, it gives him a few options, and the last option is Strangle, and that is what 7 actually decides to do, which is why the creepypasta actually has the name it does. This creepypasta is really sad to me because all 7 wanted to do was bring back his best friend, and he ended up basically making Charizard suffer death twice. I also think that this is why in the mod we see that 7's hands are bloody, because we know that strangling a person isn't necessarily going to get blood on your hands, but I think it's symbolic of the fact that 7 does actually have Charizard's blood on his hands, right? Meaning that 7 is the reason that Charizard is dead. And just on a side note, I love that they brought this shadowy version of Charizard into the mod, kind of showing like, not to be cliche, but a shadow of what Charizard used to be, right? What their battles used to look like. A very cool addition if you ask me. The next character is from a creepypasta called Super Creepy Pokemon Hack, or just Black version. The story is about a cursed copy of Pokemon Red that houses some type of ghost that takes on the appearance of the ghost in Lavender Town before you can actually identify it. This ghost is basically a mainstay in your party, meaning that you can't release it or store it in a PC. Now, the story gets creepy when you realize that this ghost has an ability called Curse, and if you're familiar with Gen 1 Pokemon, you will know that Curse wasn't actually a Pokemon move at that time. And when the ghost would actually use this move on a Pokemon, there would be a scene where it cut to black and you would hear the Pokemon cry, and then when the screen came back to normal, the Pokemon and its Pokeball were simply gone. And to up the creepy factor, you also had the ability to do the same thing with Pokemon trainers as long as they weren't important to the actual plot at that time. Meaning that you can make just regular trainers disappear, and even important trainers to the story like Giovanni, after you beat him in his last gym, you could also make him poof because he had no further use in the story. Now in the story, once you defeat the Elite Four, the game fast forwards about 60 years and your character is now an old man, which is why in the mod you're actually playing as an old man. That is technically Old Red. Now when this older version of yourself returns to your childhood home, you see all the victims that you use cursed on, both Pokemon and trainers alike. And if this wasn't clear, it is very clear now that all these people are dead because you use curse on them. Now, in the last part of the story, you see that Ghost appears and challenges you to a Pokemon battle, but Old Red doesn't have any Pokemon, so he simply has to struggle because he can't actually run away. And if you know anything about struggle, when you use it, it actually chips away at your own life. And to make matters even worse, since Ghost is like a Ghost type Pokemon, struggle doesn't even affect it. The story ends with Ghost cursing you and the screen cutting to black, of course implying that Old Red is now dead. The original story in my opinion wasn't that scary, but I like what they did here in the mod where they have the ghost actually like puppeteering whoever this is here. It makes the character seem a lot more sinister in my opinion. Now the next character that we see in this mod is actually called Glitchy Red, and he's from the creepypasta of the same name. Now this creepypasta hits home for a lot of people because first of all it deals with Pokemon Red, which invokes a sense of nostalgia for a lot of people, and it also adds some insight into why Red is so silent, meaning why he doesn't talk. Now to sum this creepypasta up, it basically involved a person who bought a copy of Pokemon Red off of eBay, and as soon as this person actually received the game and booted it up, he knew that it wasn't a normal game. But he ignored that, figuring that he had spent enough money on regular Pokemon games in the past so he could deal with having one bootleg copy. Now the protagonist of this story played through the game pretty much normally up until he got to the part where he can do that missing number glitch, but for whatever reason the glitch didn't actually work on this particular game. So the protagonist just went on playing through the game and ended up going into the mansion that's on Cinnabar Island. Now when he walked into the mansion, there was actually some text that popped up that said, "Nice try, Red." And this actually started to creep this guy out, because if you played through the Pokemon games before, you know that this actual text doesn't pop up. And it was also in all caps, as if it was the actual player saying this. Now, as he continued to progress through the game, he noticed that Red kept talking to him. And Red was basically asking, why are these things happening to him? Why is he suffering? Why are there so many glitches in his world? And why has he basically been tortured for doing nothing wrong? Now, initially, the protagonist thought that this was just a glitch, but as they started happening more and more often, he realized that this was something more than just a glitch. This video game character seemed to actually be talking to him and be actually suffering based on these glitches. And to make matters worse, one day when the protagonist was asleep, he actually had a nightmare that a kid in a red and white cap that looked a lot like Red actually appeared in his dream. And when his dream version of Red saw the protagonist, he attacked him, scratching up his chest and his sides. And this wouldn't have been a big deal if when the protagonist woke up, he didn't have those same scratches on his chest. And to make matters worse, even to this day when the protagonist wakes up, he still finds those scratches on his chest, meaning even after he beat the game, Red still comes into his dreams and attacks him. Now, while this creepypasta is obviously kind of scary, one thing that kind of always stuck with me is how sad it is as well. The whole story, Red is basically just trying to understand why he has to suffer, why does he have to die, why does he have to be dismissed and forgotten even though he was supposed to be a hero, like a Pokemon master. And since he never actually gets the answer to that, he just stops talking. That's why whenever you run into him, he's just silent. Definitely a scary Pokemon creepypasta, but also very sad. The next character that we see in the mod is Missing No, and this one is interesting because most people at least know of this glitch. It's the one where you basically go to Cinnabar Island and you swim up the side of the island, and then you're able to get this figure here. If you're like me, you probably use this in order to duplicate like the Master Ball and a bunch of rare candies. But there's actually quite a few creepypastas that go alongside this as well. In this mod specifically, they're using the creepypasta that is associated with Glitchy Red, where when you use this missing number glitch, you actually get Glitchy Red. Another creepy story that's also associated with the Missing No glitch is when you get this actual creature, it somehow makes it to where your Pokeball is no longer open, meaning that your Pokemon cannot be released. And in one creepypasta specifically, the trainer basically has to just sit and watch the Pokeball not open for days and days and days, knowing that that Pokemon inside is slowly dying. And it's actually one of the sadder creepypastas because it kind of paints this picture that inside this Pokeball is nothing but the abyss, you know, blackness, nothingness, and now this Pokemon just has to sit in this nothingness and slowly dies. The last thing that we see in this mod is this like 4 glitch Pokemon, and I thought this one was interesting because while it doesn't really have a creepypasta associated with it, it does actually have like a little wiki, and it basically says that this is one of the more dangerous glitch Pokemon. It has an ability called Super Glitch, which just basically means that it can corrupt your game and just cause it to freeze from time to time. But no, honestly, this isn't a glitch that I was ever really interested in, and even now I'm not that interested, so I'm not going to do too much digging into it. But here's the wiki in case you want to look at it yourself. Now, I know a lot of people are talking about the Hypnos Lullaby mod being rebooted and everything, but pound for pound, I think this mod was actually really well done and definitely deserves its flowers. But with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this video on the screen here, subscribe today to become a member of the Orseofkorse, and we'll see you tomorrow with another video. Peace, peace.